Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's, video, not really a video because I'm not actually recording video this time, but I'm going to be just doing a review / spoiler discussion about Eternals. Just sharing my thoughts about things, the stories, just certain developments and stuff like that. Grand scheme of things, what it means for the MCU, stuff like that. This is going to just straight up be a spoiler review. I'll start off a little light with just like my general thoughts about it, but I will warn you, like I said, it is a spoiler discussion, so I'm probably going to pretty quickly roll into that. But in general, how I felt about it, I really liked it. I thought it was great. I know people have their issues with it, and I didn't hit the same hurdles that some people did. Obviously, the whole movie being dense is kind of the word that kept getting thrown out with the early reactions and stuff, but I still enjoyed it. I loved every step of it. I'm actually surprised we didn't spend as much time in the past as I thought we would. I don't know, I guess in my head I was thinking the movie was going to be 50-50, like 50% in the past, 50% in present day. I feel like it's probably more like maybe 60-40, 70-30. It is interesting because I think this movie does a really good job of also giving us our first real understanding of the Celestials on like how much of a grand scale they exist on. We've dabbled here and there, but this is our first time, was it Arishem, the Celestial that's behind the Eternals. Obviously, Deviants have run rampant, and the Eternals were sent out to deal with them. Obviously, the group that we follow, because I was wondering, I was like, wait, are they the only ones? But it's like, no, there are Eternals everywhere in the universe. We're just following the group that ended up here on Earth. So, but they landed here 5000 BC in Mesopotamia. And I really like, getting a showcase of everyone's abilities, like Thena being able to forge the weapon she does, like a shield, a sword, and a spear / well, I guess it's kind of more like a halberd. Kingo with the, which when I see him do his thing, I'm like, kind of reminds me of Yusuke Urameshi with the spirit gun. That's immediately what I think of. But I guess you think of like finger lasers. Then you have Ikaris, who is like flying, the heat vision, very Superman-like. And I like that I don't know why it still blows my mind when like Marvel, you don't hear Marvel reference DC stuff too much, but I'm like, they reference it because they like call him Superman. I'm like, oh, so we're establishing that DC Comics exist in the Marvel universe. But just like I've watched DC TV shows that they've referenced Marvel stuff in. So it's always just an interesting conversation. I don't know why I still get so caught up in it, but I always think they would just never want to like tiptoe, like they'd never want to do that. But it's like, I guess it's kind of like a little homage to each other of like, yeah, we recognize that exists in this continuity, and it is a pop cultural thing that someone would reference. Phastos is the tech dude. Like, his thing is engineering stuff pretty quickly. Sprite, her thing is to create illusion. Makkari is the speedster of the group. Druid can control people's minds. Gilgamesh, I guess like he has that superhuman strength thing, but it's like he basically creates kind of gauntlets around. It seems like there was instances where it seemed like he could also use it in his feet, but I guess it's more so like he channels them towards gauntlets to give himself superhuman strength, but I guess it kind of applies to every aspect of his body, because there were instances where it seemed like it applied to his legs, but he didn't straight up have boots. So you have Ajak, who is the leader, who is the primary Eternal. Her power is to communicate with Arishem, but also her power is to heal. And then you also have Sersi, who can basically, because I remember hearing about one of the Eternals having a transmute ability. It's like, oh, straight up, like the best comparison I can think of is like Full Metal Alchemist, where like you can transmute stuff into something else. But her ability is transmuting inorganic stuff. She can't transmute organic stuff, which I thought was kind of an interesting initial start to the whole situation. But I like that it is that thing of like you quickly, get to showcase their powers as they sweep in. I know people have reservations about the Deviants Design. I actually really like the monstrous forms they have. Like, it feels like something I would see, like, maybe that's a knock against it for some people, but not for me. Like, it reminds me of like monsters I see in video games. Specifically, I don't know, it has like this I mean, truth be told, that seems like they seem like something you could see like in a Resident Evil type. They have that almost like that Resident Evil aesthetic, but they also remind me of something you see like in a fantasy game, like a Final Fantasy or something like that. Like, they have that kind of like design and aesthetic. I really like that, but I know like some people didn't really like that. At least when it came to the trailers. I don't know when it comes to the actual movie, like whether people have changed their mind or not. Like I'm not saying everyone felt like that, but I remember that being a conversation point. But like I said, I really like like I said, we quickly jump into like, 5000 BC, they help save people from the Deviants, and then they also showcase like, because Ajax is the leader, so she kind of gives the nod ahead of like, right, go ahead and help. And so like you see Sersi like transmute a dagger and make it a little more fancy. But then like we got hard cut to present day, and it's just like, right, they're in London. We hear a little bit about the blip a little bit, but that's about it. But like all of a sudden there's earthquakes. It is kind of interesting, like the love story we had between Ikaris and Sersi, that it was already there, but then we kind of get a little insight of like, right, they broke up a couple centuries ago, so now she's kind of finding a way to move on. Because I love that Sprite was like running her mouth off to Dane about everything, and even it's like, well, you told him about that, because it's like, wait, that's I thought you guys killed all the deviants, and like it's like, wait, you told him about that? He's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, we thought we did, you know, like when now you believe me. He's like, well, yeah, now I do, because there's like one in front of us. But because they believe they killed all of the deviants back in the 1500 AD. Was that Babylon, or was that like, no, way before then? I'm already blanking in my head. So they thought they wiped out the last of the deviants centuries ago. It was, you know, once again getting that, because we got the answer a little bit in the trailer, but it was the whole conversation of why they didn't step in when it came to Thanos. And it's like, well, because we have one mission to let human history kind of go down its own route. Which even I was like, wouldn't Thanos' interference like count as like, I get the deviants, you're supposed, I mean, to be fair, they were told this one mission and they never questioned it because it was their entire purpose. They're like, this is what we're meant to do, wipe out the deviants and let human history do its own thing. And I love that being the complication of like, right, you just want to help them, you want to nudge them in the right direction, because Phastos liked making stuff, but Ajax had to be like, calm down, that's a little too high tech, like making a steam engine for him, make something a little, he's like, all right, I made a plower, it plows the ground. And it's just like, yeah, like keep things simple, don't get too advanced too quickly, because that could shift a lot of human history. But I was curious, you know, a big chunk of this was me curious about what was going to be the thing that broke up the Eternals. And I figured, it based on the trailer and stuff like that, that it would be difference of opinions, because some of the Eternals didn't get too attached to humans. I feel like Thena never really got as attached to them as everyone else did. Maybe Makkari too, because Makkari helped out the humans, but I don't know if she ever really like, because like a lot of people latched onto the humans, like Sersi latched onto them, Kingo, Phastos, Ajax were some, and I think even he could come off like a douchebag, but even Druig, I'm butchering his name, Druig does as well. You know, I mean, he was the first one to kind of like go against, because it's like, right, we're wiped out all the deviants. The others are all dealing with a little bit, but some of them are dealing with the fact is that there's a war going on. Druig is like, I can end this right here, right now. But Ajax is like, let them fight their own war. He's like, this isn't a war. This is a genocide. And we're just going to sit here. Like, our mission brought us to this planet and we're not supposed to interfere. We're just supposed to let them kill each other. Because for him, it's like, in a second, I could end this. I could stop all this war and there could be peace. But we're not even here to be peacekeepers. We're just supposed to, you know, wipe out the deviants and that's it, you know? And that's the harsh reality of just kind of, for one, being these long-living beings on this planet where you've watched, you know, so many kingdoms rise, so many falls, so much life, so much death. It will take its toll on you. I mean, it's so interesting because we end up finding out the Eternals can actually have a disease that basically they have too many memories. It's a complication at the very least, when we have Thena basically going berserk. And it's kind of something that the Eternals are aware of. And Ajax like, okay, I can fix this, but I'm going to have to wipe your memory. And she's like, no, I don't want that. Like, if you take away my memories, then I won't remember who I am. But Ajax is like, even without your memories, you're still going to be you and your spirit, you know? And that's what pissed Druig off. Is like, you're just going to be like, you're just going to take everything from her like that. It's just because he got tired of Ajax's leadership. Because it's like, right, you're supposed to be our leader. You're supposed to be one leading the charge. And like, look where we are at in this moment. So Druig Wit controlled all the people and just bounced, you know, because Ikaris was trying to stop him, but Ajax told him just to let him go, because in this moment Ajax is like, right, all the deviants are going, go live your lives. You don't have to stay here. We don't have to stay together. I want you to go out there, live your lives, you know, experience this world, and then come back and tell me everything, you know? Because I think for her, it was like, it's time for the kids to go out there and spread their wings. Like, they don't need to, like, I think seeing Drew, I think maybe Drew, like, stepping out on his own probably inspired that. Like, right, me trying to hold you all together is just going to make you fall apart. So just go live your lives. And everyone went their separate ways because Gilgamesh decided to stay with Thena to kind of make sure she was okay. And even Ajax was like, if you do this, there's a chance she might go crazy again and you might have to kill her. And he's kind of like, well, we'll come to that bridge when we have to, because that way I'll keep an eye on her and she doesn't have to sacrifice her memories. I skipped over this a little bit, but I thought it was an interesting thing, and I like that it is a crux of Sprite's character, because the moment, like, this guy's, like, talking to her, and then, like, he phases to her head, and he's like, what? And she's like, oh, you're too drunk, and turns back into her kid form. I'm like, oh, I see that. You're perpetually stuck as a child, so you have to, like, create illusions to make yourself seem older. But the thing is, the illusions, well, they aren't real, so they phase through. Because obviously, it's so interesting, because it's like, right, it's not like it's her, like, it's an illusion on top of her real body. So, like, she's making herself taller and have longer arms. So, like, that's why when he touched her hand, it was because it's not a real, it's built around her. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting because we have Loki, who does a lot of illusion stuff like that. And I'm like, I think Sprite could put Loki to shame of some of what, I mean, to be fair, like, her power doesn't work in an offensive sense. It's more a defense, where he can also use other aspects of magic to attack, but her main thing is, like, defense and evasion, as they, like, she was creating multiple versions of herself and Sersi to, like, confuse the deviant. But then your boy Ikaris shows up, which obviously Dane had heard about Ikaris before. It's like, yeah, she said that your boyfriend could fly. It's like, oh yeah, he's a pilot. It's like, oh, okay. Now it's like, oh, cool. He literally flies and he shoots beams out of the eyes, even being like, oh, so this is the pilot. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But not only is the deviant tough, this deviant also has the power to heal itself, and they're like, whoa, what the hell is that? We've never come across a deviant that's ever had that ability before. So they wanted to go to Ajax because she must have some, like, you know, answer to all of this, because the fact is that, you know, she's the one that must talk to Arishem and has to have some answers. But when they get to Ajax, they find her dead. I was like, oh, snap. But also, it's just like, yeah, they're not, like, they may live a long time, but they're not immortal. They can be killed if they sustain. And, you know, once again, it's the thing of immortality versus invulnerability. It's like, no, they won't age, but they are killable. And it's just like, but it's still like, holy crap. Because first and foremost, I'm like, wow, our first look at Salma Hayek present day and her character's dead. I was like, wow. But then, you know, jumping around a little bit, that's where I'm just like, wait, is the twist what I think it is? I was like, oh, I would have never, I'll go ahead and talk about it. Like, I didn't expect, I was surprised to find out Ikaris was the one that was kind of like the quote-unquote traitor. To be told is, technically every other Eternal is the traitor. He's the one that's all about the mission. But I knew it because, once again, just context of like, right, we know from the trailer that there was a scene between, because she warned him about the emergence. She was like, oh, 7 days. But it's like, he never said anything about it. That's why I was like, did you do that to Ajax? Did you betray her? Because I was already kind of under the notion, because I figured that, right, the Eternals would turn against each other because they'd be on opposite sides of things, because they have their different perspectives about life here on Earth, about whether, you know, whether they interfere and when not to. That I figured, like, some Eternals would be on, would turn against the others, but I didn't expect Ikaris, because he seemed loyal, and, well, to be fair, he's a little too loyal to the mission, you know, but it's sad, you know, for them, because it's like, right, like, they spent so much time apart, and even, we never found out when it was, but Sprite was like, yeah, like, she created an illusion of the last time she saw Ajax, and Ajax wanted her to keep an eye on the others, so, like, she went and, checked in on Sersi, and's kind of been living with her ever since. But that's kind of a shame of, like, the last time, like, who knows, like, whether, like, centuries had passed since they'd all been together, sure, but, like, even, like, when, like, because Sprite might have seen Sersi, well, aside from Ikaris, she might have been the one seeing Ajax more recently. He ends up getting the spear from Ajak's body. They said like, oh, Ajak must have chosen her. I wonder, was that always the plan? Or, you know, is that I guess it's like even in that state, it's like her body is already looking for its successor, or maybe Ajak always knew, and it just was the moment of waiting for the right person to show up, and that was Sersi to take charge, you know? Because I remember them saying that all the Eternals are kind of important, but it's kind of like a Birth by Sleep thing of like, everyone's story is important, but like Ventus is really, really kind of a central thing in certain regards. So like, that's why I remember hearing talks about Gemma Chan's character Sersi would be like a centerfold to this, but I was like, oh, I thought Ajak was like, oh, it's because Ajak's dead most of the movie, except for like the past stuff. I'm like, damn, that's wild. Like I said, I just wasn't expecting that. But I do like the, like, you know, let's go around and recruit everybody up. Like Kingo now is a Bollywood like star, and I love that. It's like, because I think it's like Drew like made joke about him being like a movie star. He's like, I've directed a few things too, and he's like, what? Some internet content, how many views? He's like, I don't get caught up in view counts. I was like, we're having this conversation, but yeah, like he's making his own like stuff, and he's kind of he's even told Karun, who's kind of like, he's known Karun for like 50 years, and it's like, yo, he knows about us and everything, which I love that you have those moments where they kind of look at each other like, why are you guys just blabbing about us being Eternals? Like Sprite was blabbing to Dane, and now like Kingo's over here being a blabbermouth to somebody. It's like, well, one person knows, but it's like, oh yeah, like he's so happy to meet them, and I love, because you see it in the trailer, but I never put the context together, like, oh yeah, he's filming the entire adventure, and I love that Kingo's like, oh, like Sprite, tell him a little bit about yourself, and Sprite like gives him the middle finger and disappears. Then like, oh, Sersi, tell something about yourself. She's like, well, I can turn water into this and this and this. It's like, oh, I even turned it into this one time. And Kingo's like, okay, we'll circle back to you after a while. Just kind of like, ugh. But I love his whole shtick too. It's like, oh, like, how is he hidden so long? Even though he's out in the open as an actor, he's like, oh no, this is my great-grandfather. This is my grandfather. This is my dad. And this is me. I'm like, that's so crazy. It was like playing with that, you know, extended life, that immortality. I thought that was kind of a neat way of handling that. But, you know, Sprite felt like Kingo just straight up abandoned. It's like, yeah, we're supposed to be friends. We're supposed to stick together. But once again, like, everyone went their separate ways. And even Kingo's like, right, if we hadn't split up, maybe Ajak would still be alive. We should have never gone, she should have never given us the option to go our separate ways. We should have stayed together, you know? But to be fair, she wanted them to live their lives. I mean, she'd even said that to Ikaris. She wanted Ikaris to, he's like, right, my feelings for Sersi won't get in the way. She's like, just go, like, open yourself up. And she did. You know, even at one point we saw that they kind of, like, it seemed like it was like a marriage ceremony. They never really talk about it, but I think it might have just been a ceremony for lovers, because they never really say, like, oh, we were married or anything like that. It's just like, no, we were together, you know, for, like, centuries, not just centuries, like, well, because it was centuries, because it took a while for them to actually get together. It was just kind of a will they, won't they thing for such a long time. They also set up like the Druig and Makkari thing. Like, it's just like he was always like very flirtatious with her from time to time when he was kind of alone with her, just talking about how beautiful she is and stuff. I did like, circling back, I do like that they ride on like Kingo's like special jet and everything, and then they track down Gilgamesh and Thena, which I thought was kind of interesting too, because they have lived so long. We do get little ins and outs about their life, like, oh, at one point Thena was messing with like Excalibur, and then it's like, I think Sprite made a point about like, oh yeah, like Arthur did have a crush on you, didn't he? But also it turns out a lot of stories, like a lot of Greek mythology in particular, about Athena, the goddess of war, is based on her, which I always thought, like, wasn't she the goddess of wisdom? But I guess, like, maybe it just depends on the, because I feel like she's always labeled as a goddess of wisdom and never like a goddess of war, but, you know, maybe it's just they're shifting it a little bit. Because it's interesting, because we know, like, at least in the universe that is Marvel, there are, like, well, we've met the Norse gods. We know, like, there's Greek stuff in here, like, well, because Zeus is supposed to pop up in, God, what was it? Thor: Love and Thunder, because it's he's supposed to be played by Russell Crowe. Because even Kingo made a point about like, oh, speaking of Odin, I remember when little Thor used to run around, but now he's like a big time superhero and can't even call me back. I'm like, has he actually been in touch with Thor? And then Thor's like probably like, oh, Kingo, and he probably doesn't remember because it's probably back in his partying days and stuff like that. And he's become a somewhat responsible superhero now, so maybe that changes things. But I love that Kingo was all about the drink too, and Gilgamesh was like, oh yeah, like I chew it up in my and let it ferment in my spit, and it's just like, ugh. But even the conversation about like, oh yeah, the Avengers, who's going to lead them. I love that they laugh at it a lot. Well, because I think the way it's cut, they're laughing at Sprite making Gilgamesh dress. He's like, oh, I look like a big baby now. Can you fix that? But because he's constantly joking about how which that's her biggest insecurity. Like, people are poking fun at her at it, not realizing like how much trauma that's caused her, like forever perpetually looking like a child. But Ikaris decided like, no, I could lead the Avengers now that Iron Man and Captain America are gone. He's like, it'd be a good fit for me. And I love that Gilgamesh is like, no, we both know I'm the more handsome of us, so it should probably, but Sersi finally accesses the spear and is able to talk to Arishem, and it turns out we find out the truth about the Eternals. I'm like, because at first I was like, are we going to do a little bit of a Captain Marvel thing here where it's like your entire existence is kind of a lie to some extent? It's like, yeah, we are. But it goes even further because it's not just a couple years in your life that are blank and a lie. Well, a lot of your history has been redacted. It's even more so in their case, which is interesting timing because it's a very Doctor Who situation, like, oh, your history's been stolen from you. Like, all your memories, we have them stored, but it's just so they can gather information on the deviants and stuff like that. Because I was like, why would you store that? Just for them to, I guess you never have to worry about them ever finding it. Finding out, like, oh, you're talking about, like, when your mission is done, you can go back to your planet Olympia. Because I thought that was interesting when they first, like, oh, I was like, oh, they're aliens? I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, they're out in space, but I wouldn't think they're just aliens. Like, Celestials are aliens, I guess, but you wouldn't just label them as such. But it's like, no, it's all BS. Not only did a Celestial make the Deviants, it made the Eternals to balance that out because, which is also interesting, like, to show, like, oh, the Celestials aren't infallible. They make mistakes because there was something wrong with the Deviants code. It was supposed to only wipe out the apex predators so that life could begin, intelligent life could be born on that planet, but they went further than they were supposed to. It became the apex predators themselves, and that's why the Eternals exist. They're basically, that's why they're given their mission, but also, like, why their memories eventually get wiped out, to keep them in a position where it's like, right, we're going to, have you killed a deviant, and then when the Earth, given enough time, populates fully, then a Celestial is born. And like, now we're getting into the ins and outs of how these beings are born, and that's a super jacked up way. He's like, is there literally no other way to bring forth a Celestial? Like, you need a lot, because I was curious, like, what the Emergence actually was, and the Emergence is the emergence of a Celestial, the sacrifice of every life that the entire planet has to get cracked open and destroyed for a Celestial to be born. Because wasn't Ego technically considered a Celestial? Or no, I think he considered himself one, but he wasn't actually one, I think. Once again, this mission you believed in wholeheartedly was a lie. Everything about you is a lie. Your memories aren't even a lie, because now they start thinking like, right, that's why Thena was actually been telling us the entire time, like, well, we thinking she's been going crazy, which she kind of has. It's a byproduct of them ripping out her memories. It glitched, and so she's remembering stuff she's not supposed to, and so it kind of sends her body into like a trance of sorts. But it's like, yeah, she was remembering every other planet they've been to and they've destroyed. They've been to countless planets and they've led to the birth. Because apparently, like, Ajak has been doing this for like 1,000,000 years. So it isn't just like, oh, like what they've done. It's like, no, this has happened time and time and time again. I'm curious if the core group of Eternals we get this movie, has she always been with them? Like, or has she like jumped teams? Like, has she, like, oh, the Eternals on a different planet, has she worked with them? Like, is this like her new crew essentially for this new part of the plan? Because she is the primal, I wonder, is she the only one that, well, it seems like, I guess it seems like with the post credits, it seems like maybe there are other primals amongst the other groups of Eternals. Maybe she would, but they said she did this for like 1,000,000 years. It could just be like, yeah, she's the only one that keeps her memories, but it is the same group all the time. So that's interesting. Now it turns into a little bit of the division about what they should do, because the conversation is, we don't need to kill a Celestial, we just need to stop it until we can figure out a way around this. But Kingo's like, we can't. Like, if we do that, the Celestial being born is a necessary thing, even if it means the sacrifice of this planet. The sacrifice of this planet will bring forth billions of other lives. Because Ajax always pointed out from the beginning, like, this planet was very special, but their Celestial, like, their parent essentially was like, no. You've got your mission. Don't get too attached to this planet. But they couldn't help it. They all got attached. Well, not all of them, but some of them got attached in their own regards. It turns out where Druig is staying in the Amazon, it's the place where they parted way all those years ago. He happened to stay there. And he kind of had no interest in helping all of, this whole situation out, because it's like, right, finding out, like, you gave me a whole bunch of bad news at once. Now you're telling me my entire life is a lie. Like, I'm not going to help that. But then, the Deviants show up and everybody does their thing. Gilgamesh is balancing fighting off some of the Deviants while also trying to keep Thena in line. And your boy Ikaris gets to work. I love your boy Kingo just like doing his thing, and Karun is recording everything, and he's just like, no, get to safety. What are you doing? And then Kingo does his thing. He charges up, gets underneath, fires, and blows its head off. And he's just, oh. And it's like, Karun, did you get that? He's like, yes, I did, sir. And it's like, you're a good man, Karun. Despite everything, you're keeping up the good work. I wonder, like, given enough time, could regular weapons kill the Deviants? It seemed like it's only an Eternals thing, because Druig had all those people under his control, like, blasting away at it. But even he, like, picked up a gun at one point in time, started blasting at the Deviant. But it seems like, yeah, they're the only ones with the actual power. But it kind of makes sense, because you were literally designed to kill them, because it's like they're the yin to your yang. But we also see, and they didn't really touch on it with anyone else, but they definitely did with Sersi. We see that Sersi has a power, because for the longest time, she could only transmute organic objects, but in that moment, she turned that deviant into a tree. So the question then becomes, like, is it because she became the primary Eternal in that moment? Well, I mean, before now, like, because Ajax passed it on to her, so her powers, like, multiplied? Or do they all secretly have even more power they just haven't tapped into? Because it does seem like they were designed to have their own restrictions, so they never got too powerful, which that ends up being a plot point of, like, unlimiting themselves and drawing their power into one. Sadly, Gilgamesh died protecting Thena, because you have to drop the A, because she was in one of her states at the time and she couldn't snap out of it. But this particular Deviant started morphing more into a humanoid form, because I think it started reflecting less like a Deviant and more like an Eternal. I mean, they are brothers, they are kin at the end of the day anyway. And so, but for it, it's like, right, we're not the bad guys of the story. In no shape or form are you guys the heroes. You slaughtered all of my people. Like, all we've ever done is try and fight to live like any other creature in existence. We didn't choose to be made the way we were, but we were, and maybe something was wrong in our DNA, but that's not our fault. We fought to survive, and what have you done? You slaughtered, you genocided our entire species. So it's interesting that Druig would bring it up earlier with the humans to an extent, but obviously they never once thought the same of the Deviants. It's like, oh, these things are evil beings, but it's like, no, they're essentially your brethren. And he was planning on killing all of the Eternals to pay them back, because now he's sentient. With every power, every Eternal he kills and absorbs their power, he gains more sentience. Because they were meant to just be these animal. They weren't meant to be the high functioning beings like the Eternals are, but by combining what it is with what they are, it can be. I think that is such an interesting thing, that thing is a background threat. It's not like it gets tossed aside of, like, yeah, it's a threat in its own right, but it's just an enemy. It's not the big bad of the movie. I mean, who is technically the big bad in the movie? That argument could be made in different regards. I guess to some extent you could say, like, Arishem kind of is. I mean, when you actually break it down, it's like what they're doing. Like, is it technically any different? Like, what does that make you? It didn't come up in the movie, but it's like, what does that make you in comparison to like Thanos? I mean, everything he did because he thought he was helping the universe by doing what he did. But you know, it's like, yeah, like this is all because to Arishem, this is all part of the cycle, the life and death. Like this universe is constantly in a perpetual state of creation and destruction. This is the circle of life on a universal scale. Like, and billions have to die on a planet so a celestial can be born to birth so many more. So it's just like, I don't know. It tried to make it seems like it trivializes but it's like trivializes the lives of everyone on this planet, but the point is it's part of a bigger picture. This is sacrifices have to be made to keep the cogs of this universal machine going. I thought it was also interesting too, the speaking of Phastos, his whole circumstance of why he kind of like, because even Drew's like, oh, you don't like, I don't like humans. Like, yeah, he's completely turned his back on the humans, so but it turns out the reason why Phastos did that is because Hiroshima, he helped because he's been helping humanity like technologically advance. He's like, if I hadn't given them something so advanced, maybe this wouldn't happen. But that's also a double-edged sword because history will tell you like it was a sacrifice. It was something that moment, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were the means to end World War II. That put the nail in the coffin for the war, but at the same time, it's like, so it's a double-edged sword of like, yes, he felt like, no, like these humans, they're not worth saving, they're not worth protecting if they're able to do this to each other. It's like, no, forget them, they're not worth it. Like, we spent so much time helping them. He's like, even Druid was like right about that. Like, we shouldn't have done this. And like, all Ajak could do was like console him because once again for him it's like I got betrayed by the people that I've protected. I've watched them grow, I've helped them grow, but maybe I helped them advance a little too fast. So I think that's kind of interesting because it's like for him it's like the Hiroshima falls on his shoulders. It's like I'm the one that kind of put that technology in human. Now whether he's like I'm directly responsible because I gave them access to the technology or because humans have been making their fast advancements because of me, so them getting to this point sooner than much later is still on me. Granted, once again, it's the different circumstances. I'm not trying to justify like all the lives that were lost, but like in the grand scheme of the history, once again, it's always a conversation, sadly, about the bigger picture, you know? And that's, the whole conversation is actually kind of interestingly enough in contrast with like, Infinity War / Endgame, you know, Steve not willing to sacrifice one person to kind of make the ends meet, you know, but on the flip side of things, Tony was because he was willing to sacrifice himself to end Thanos, you know, so I think there's like just an interesting parallel between the two, but we do learn that present day Phastos has a family. He's got a husband, he's got a child. And so for him, he gave up on humanity for a long time until he found his husband. And it's like, right, they remind me every day, like that there is good here. But for him, it's like, I don't use my powers because I don't want to take the chance my powers get used and the Hiroshima happens again. And he's like, no. But he still uses them because his place is decked out except for the IKEA table. But his husband convinced him to do this because it's for the sake of everyone, especially because the world's about to end. So you need to do this, you know, and we'll be here waiting for you when it's all said and done. Circling back really quickly with the Gilgamesh thing, I thought was like I said, they are synthetic beings. So it's just once again still like, yeah, the fact is they can burn his body and reduce him to ashes. It's like once again they're not like they have these powers, but at the end of the day, I mean it's just like Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers is a regular dude. Yes, he has super serum in him, but at the end of the day, he is just a regular human, so he can get shot and killed just like anybody else. So it's just interesting that yeah, even some of the most powerful beings in this universe. I don't know how the Eternals would stand toe-to-toe with anyone else like Captain Marvel or like Thor. Because I'd say like currently speaking, like threshold power-wise, they'd be like your two heavy hitters currently in the MCU. I don't know how they'd compare, well, in comparison, so... But I would assume the Eternals are still like on top of the food chain when it comes to the power dynamic. I mean, you also have to throw Wanda in there too, so... So a long-running question that I had that I'm curious if other people had it too. I'm not going to assume I'm the only one who had it, but a big question I had was whether or not the Eternals were affected by Thanos' initial snap that wiped out half the universe. Now, my initial thought was like, I mean, this is like a while back. This is like way before the movie obviously came out, even before we even saw trailers for it. It was like sometime after the movie was announced. My thought was maybe they're on such a high power level that the Eternals were never affected by it. The other part at the time I thought was maybe some of them were, some of them weren't. Based on what we've seen, and at no point, because the blip comes up in conversation, but at no point did any of the Eternals on Earth reference getting blipped. So that means none of them were affected. So they just happen to be the lucky 10 to not get snapped. So not unless it's like, oh, they didn't get snapped, but Eternals on other planets got snapped. Or could it be that because of what they actually are, they aren't living beings. They are sentient, but they're not living beings. And maybe the snap, because we know the snap affected, I think, animals, humans, and did it affect animals? I think it might have. I know it affected humans and aliens and stuff like that, but that might be like the higher, like, sentient living beings of a planet. So keyword living, because they're not living, they're essentially robots. And the deviants, because I was about to say, well, would they have been affected by the snap? But it's like, no, they and the Eternals are all created beings, so they're not living beings, so this snap probably didn't affect them. Current, like there's no definitive answer of that, but them all never saying anything about getting snapped seems to be proof of that. Like I said, not unless it's a power level thing, but once again, they're not like crazy power. Well, I was about to say not unless it's like they do have celestial energy mixed into them. That's what makes them them. So it could be that celestial energy prevented them, because we are talking about the snap is Infinity Stones. They are cosmic energy, each one, and just all put together in just one powerful intention of wiping out half the universe. So maybe the celestial side of things protected them. Because like what would be really interesting is, well, because we know one Infinity Stone didn't kill Peter because he was half celestial. So they're quote unquote celestial, because once again, the conversation of whether or not Ego's actually one. So there's that. But also, like, because he was dead at the time, I think we'd have a more definitive answer if Vision was alive. Because if he was alive and he didn't get snapped, then it was like, oh, you don't count as a living sentient being, so you got spared. Because it's just interesting to know what fell through the loopholes of the snap. Because we know Scott in the quantum realm was able to escape that snap. So makes you wonder. I would assume maybe because at least at the TVA headquarters, we know the Infinity Stones don't work there, so the snap wouldn't have affected them, but also because I think the TVA exists in like a pocket dimension, or at the very least it exists outside of time, kind of like the Void does. So like I doubt the snap would reach that far, nor would it have even affected Kang at the end of time. Because that is a time thing and not necessarily like a very specific point in time here. It's at the end of time, so it wouldn't have reached him, but the TVA we know was potentially unaffected. So I don't know, it's just interesting as this is going on, we have found certain loopholes in the snap, even as powerful as the Infinity Stones are, even their stuff that kind of falls out of their grasp and stuff like that, out of their reach when it comes to the snap. So I thought that was interesting. Like I said, it's just a question I've had for like a while now, and like I said, the movie never really gave you like a definitive answer, but its lack of an answer is kind of an answer in itself, so I did like when they retrieved their ship and everything, and Kingo was like doing his thing with the camera and making things seem sinister, and then Phastos is like, what are you doing now? He heard the noise, he's like, oh, what was that? And it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, we are very much like human because we are able to display emotions like that. Cowardice. And you just see Phastos in the background almost like, what? Like, I love that, fear, like calling him a coward in that moment. But, their plan is to try and find a way. Phastos is going to be the one that's going to be working on the means necessary to try and stop the emergence from happening. Also, we found Makkari on the ship. I'm like, how long has she been sitting there waiting? Like, I guess it became like her hub home. Like, she just goes there. Like, I don't think she's just been waiting there the entire time, because there was a whole bunch of stuff like King Arthur's sword and other stuff. I love, like, the tablet and the, like, food Ikaris and Druig, like, exchanged. But it's like, yeah, she's been gathering stuff the entire time, and I guess she just, like, zips all over the place and just, like, comes back here to chill and relax. Like, I don't know if she's just been here the entire time since the, because they didn't really talk about what she's been up to on Earth. We've kind of got an idea of what, like, everyone else was kind of up to some extent. Well, we never really found out all that Ikaris was doing it with his time. He's, like, the only one we don't know. Because Druig was just in the Amazon the entire time, just chilling. He came back and just stayed. And Makkari, we don't know what she was up to either. But the means necessary to stop all this from happening, it's up to them to find a way. And Phastos came up with a way. It's basically combining all their powers into one, almost like a Super Skrull type of thing. But with that, he plans on using Druig's ability to control the Celestial to put it back to sleep. Very like Mantis against Thanos. That was kind of like her point, to put him kind of in a deep sleep type of thing, to get the gauntlet off type of thing. Which I guess you can almost make a parallel of, like, yeah, very similar thing of like someone else's actions getting in the way. But, yeah, finding out the truth about Ikaris. That is enough that, you know, for him, he thought he was the chosen one because Ajak told him after, like, Babylon the truth. So he's known the truth the entire time, but he's lied to everyone around him. That's why he left Sersi so long ago, is because being around her would have meant constantly lying to her and everyone else, so he'd rather be off on his own. But Ajax contacted him and told him about the emergence, you know, but she wanted to stop it because it's like, she's like, I've seen what this planet is capable of. Like, the fact of the matter is Thanos wiped out half the universe, and what did they do? Like, the humans, what did they do? The people of this planet, they came together, and with a single snap, they brought everyone back. Even when the odds are against them, they just seem like they're small, insignificant, but they're not. This planet's so great and amazing. Like, Ajax felt that from the beginning, but Arishem told her not to think like that, because if you look at them more than just the means that they are to bring forth the Celestial, because she has looked at things like that way before, but something about Earth touched her, like that spark of humanity, like, implanted itself in them. And, you know, also she's carrying around million years of doing it over and over and over and over again, that of finally reaching this planet and getting to be amongst its people, and seeing just how much of an influence it's had, not only how much of an influence they've had on the humans, but how much of an influence the humans have had on them. She saw how it affected the other Eternals. That's what changed things, because who knows, other planets might have changed them as well. They just don't have the memories anymore. But Ikaris chose to stop her, and even Ajax blames herself. She's like, if I sent you down the wrong path, he's like, this is the only path I've ever known, because she told him the truth. She made him hold on to that truth for so long that it's all about the mission, because he's the loyal soldier. And the moment, like, she tried to take away his mission, he's like, no, like, you've made me sacrifice everything for this truth that you told me. In my relationship with Sersi, I had to give up on, like, my relationship with the rest of us, the internal, like, I've spent so much time alone, separated from everyone, to keep your secret. I've been your confidant. I was your right. It's all about this mission, because what we're doing is too important. And he ended up killing Ajax or rather, he let the Deviant kill her. Like, I think he didn't realize that it would be a byproduct of this, would be that Deviant would get as powerful as it is and kind of run amok. Because even he said the line of, like, I don't think I'd be powerful enough to protect you. I don't know whether he really believed that the, because I probably believe that, like, alone he probably wouldn't have been able to kill that thing, you know. But the truth's coming out, him trying to stop everyone. Also, because I am the speedster fan that I am, I love that type of stuff. When Makkari was looking for the centerfold of the Emergence and zipping around the planet, I'm like, yeah, I love that type of stuff, dude. Oh, it looks so dope. But to the point that he didn't want to fight anybody, but he had to put everybody in their place. He had to, it's like, right, you never had any intention of letting us stop the Emergence. It's like, no. He was hoping that basically he could waste enough of their time, which, yeah, he killed Ajak, helped kill Ajak 6 days ago. But even then, it's not like he didn't make that decision lightly. It happened and it broke him, because it's just like, I killed someone that I've been so loyal to, that's a friend, this is someone I love and care about, and just like, he let out his heat vision at the time. In this moment, he tried to attack Makkari, but Kingo stood in his way. And obviously, he's even telling others, like, do you really think that you'll be able to stop me? And Sprite goes with them. And which the others are like, why would Sprite go with him? And Kingo points out, because she's in love with him. It's a complicated thing of, like, in the Amazon, he had made the comparison of, like, right, Sersi's Wendy, and Ikaris is Peter Pan, and it makes Sprite Tinkerbell. And even in the end credits, like, she's got that, like, fairy aesthetic to her at the end. But it's like, yeah, Tinkerbell who's secretly in love with Peter Pan, Because he will never look at her more than the little girl that she is. Because, and she's like, why did the Eternals why did Celestial, why did Arishem make me like this? Like, why can't, like, I have a normal body? That was even part of her motivation. It's like, being around these humans made her realize that she wanted something she never even thought about, like wanting to grow up, grow old, to have a family. She could never have any of that, and she was always going to be the other amongst not even just the other people, because at least the other Eternals can blend in. She never could, because it's like, right, like, I can't have because it'd be a weird thing of like, yeah, I'm stuck perpetually as a child. I was curious, like, how they were going to handle that, because I'm like, the actress who plays her is going to grow up, so, like, how are they going to get around it? We'll get to that when we get to it, but it's like, yep, the movie answered that. But, once again, it's like, knowing how she looks and being stuck as a child has always been a sore spot for her, but it only became more and more apparent. It became more and more of a scar for her the more time had passed, because she spent so much time around humans, and it made her realize she never realized what she wanted until she was around the humans, and be like, right, you want what you can't have type of thing, So that's why she's working with Ikaris and all of this. But despite everything, Thena comes to Sersi, because Sersi she's like, right, we can't kill an Eternal, like, what Kingo said is true, which even Kingo left. He's like, I'm not going to, like, work with Ikaris to do this, but I'm also not going to, like, but I'm not going to harm you because of my belief, because he's like, right, I believe it is the nature of things, like, them interfering is going against the very structure of this universe, but it's like, right, like, we're not, because even, Phastos said, like, we're not even giving because he's like, if we gave the humans a choice, would even one of them sacrifice themselves to save, like, but it's like, the argument is, one did. You had one human, Iron Man, Tony Stark, sacrifice himself to stop Thanos. Like, shouldn't that speak volumes on its own? But, even when he thought he was alone, Steve, Mjolnir, and the shield in hand, he stood before Thanos and his entire army because he wasn't going to back down. That shows, like, one person can't, but, Phastos' point mainly was like, right, but we're not even giving them a choice. It's like, we're making this choice for them. It's like, and this is going to happen to your planet. Nothing you can do about it. Like, we're not going to prepare them. Like, what are we going to do? Because the point was also, like, maybe we could just transport the humans to it. It's like, oh, kind of a Noah's Ark thing of, like, transporting the humans to, like, a different planet. But still, this is their home. This is their world. They fought tooth and nail to get it back, like, from Thanos. Like, after he wiped out half the universe, people on this planet came together to make that happen, to bring everyone back across the universe, And that's also the thing of, like, you can't treat this planet in particular for being insignificant when it is the epicenter of everything, Because it also turns out the blip, inadvertently, Thanos was helping out because he did the blip. It also made it so that none any planets that were set up for the Emergence, none of them could do what they needed to do. It's interesting too because the Celestials did the whole like celestial seeds around, just like Ego did the exact same thing about his children and stuff like that. So that's fascinating. Like I said, I brought it up earlier, but I'm pretty sure he's not a Celestial. I think he just claimed to be one. I mean, how does a Celestial die anyway? Because we know nowhere. We never got any answers about, like, nowhere, the floating Celestial here. We never got any answers about that, but maybe something in this cosmic realm, specifically stuff tied to the Eternals, would eventually answer that, but like I said, circling back, though, after I went on that tangent, Thena gets Sersi to kind of stand up. It's like, right, like, you were chosen. Ajax chose you for a reason, so we've got to end this. Like, you care these humans, you love and care for them so much. That's why Ajax chose you. So it's up to you to save them, to use that same love you have for them, not to toss them aside, but to help them. So using the spear inside of her, Phastos was able to make the bracelet, and they were going to try with the Druid situation, but Ikaris got in the way and it turned into a full-blown battle. It's like, yo, Makkari went in, dude. I like that. It's just like because she could just use her speed to like make up for her lack of like a super strength. It's the fact is like, you know, doing her speedster thing of like, especially when she was like dragging Ikaris's face into like the side of the rock and stuff. Phastos was pretty dope, like manufacturing, like really showcasing what his powers are. The fact is that he's making like blasters. And even at one point, he creates all these rings and stuff to bind Ikaris down. He's like, oh, I've been waiting a long time to clip your wings, Ikaris. I was like, oh, I love that line. Because it seemed like, what sent Makkari over the edge is when they thought that Druid was dead. Luckily, he can't keep a good guy down under these circumstances. So he left it to Sersi to do it. And even when given the chance, Ikaris broke free and confronted her after, you know, Sprite did, but Druid knocked her out. But even when the time came, because because the difference is it broke his heart to do it, but at least with Ajax he could. He loves Sersi. He cares about the others, but he loves Sersi, and in that moment he just couldn't bring himself to do it because he loves her too much. And in that moment, Sersi connects to everyone there, including Sprite, including Ikaris, and using their power, she transmutes the Celestial, kind of killing it, turning it into stone, I guess is what she ended up happening. But the way Phastos kind of explains, like, that's how they've always survived the emergence on any other planet. Because when the Celestials are being born, they are tied to the Celestials' powers. So in that moment, they get a supercharge from the Celestial being born, and that's why they're able to live when it's all said and done. But they've stopped the Celestial. Ikaris, you know, asking for forgiveness, you know, ends up flying into the sun. Now, whether he's actually dead, it seems like he might be, but he might have just gone there to just put himself in. Well, once again, they aren't invulnerable, so like him sending himself there might have actually killed him. But it's like he couldn't live with what he did. You know, it's like, right, like I turned against everyone. Like, how could I ever be forgiven for what I did? You know, because it's not just a situation, because he threatened to kill every one of them. I mean, the difference is Sprite might have betrayed them and stopped them. Yes, she stabbed Sersi, but she didn't kill anybody. He killed Ajax and lied and manipulated everyone. So, because in his mind, he thought he was doing the right thing. I mean, this was our purpose. This is our role to play in the grand scheme of what is the universe. We had our role to play, so he was just fulfilling it. So it's sad that things came down to this. But we also had Thena finishing off. That's why I'm saying, like, that Deviant wasn't the main bad, but she needed to get revenge. Because she was always about a battle, which I even love that he was like, Ikaris is like, oh, you've never fought me before. She's like, yes, but I've always wanted to. You know, but she went toe-to-toe with that Deviant. And it tried to use Gilgamesh's voice. It's like, oh, remember. And in that moment, Thena snapped out of her trance. Because his whole thing was like, very much like they set up the Black Natasha and Hulk situation of like, right, the sun is setting, big guy. It's almost kind of that, like, Gilgamesh was able to calm her down. Because I love that, because that's actually that her relationship with Gilgamesh is what she was explaining to convince Sersi to do what she's doing, because it's like, she's like, I asked Gilgamesh why he decided to stay by my side, and he's like, it's such a natural instinct to want to protect what you love. It is the most purest natural instinct, and so that's what she wanted Sersi to do. It's like, you love these people, just give into your feelings and needs to protect them. And, you know, getting justice for Gilgamesh as well as Ajax. Thena broke free, slice. I love that like samurai thing of just kind of like slice, and then the Deviant standing there, and then his face and body like slices to pieces. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting you to go down that easy, you know. But she's like, I do remember, you know. So it's like, right, she focused on her memories of Gilgamesh, and you know, and why he did what he did, you know, dying to protect her, what he'd always stuck by her side for those centuries. So it's like, I do remember. And I guess also maybe like the memories of every other, I think a combination of all of it, but with the power she had remaining, Sersi ended up making Sprite human. It's like, now you can finally have everything that you've ever wanted, but there will be no going back if you do this. And she's like, I understand. So it's interesting. That's why I was like, yeah, the actress is going to get older. So how are you going to, oh yeah, that's how you get around that. You make her human now. So that's fascinating. I wonder, like, will it be a permanent thing, or I'm sure, like, I'm so curious to find out about that. I mean, it's like, you've lived so much, you know, but even then, like, that living for as long as you have was stifled because you couldn't fully live until now, you know? So now that everything is what it is, like, you have Phastos wanting to go back to his kids, obviously his husband, but his husband's like, wait, did you guys do that? Because it's like 2 weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, he's like, I love you so much for being so understanding, I love you. But also like telling Thena that she's permanently off babysitting duties, because he was like, nah, like, you know, we don't use violence, we use our words. And she's like, oh, like, you did on the battlefield? He was like, yes, I used my words and I was really good at it. I love the way he handled that whole situation. But Phastos was going to stay, but Druig, Makkari, and Thena were going to go out and find their fellow Eternals and tell them the truth. It's like, right, will they accept the truth like we did? And it's Makkari's like, they will, because the truth will set them free. You know, I mean, who's to say you won't get another Ikaris amongst them, you know? So, but Kingo is going off with Karun and Sprite. She's also having to go to school and everything now. He's like, yeah, I'll help you with your social skills and stuff like that. He's like, wow, you need those. He's like, wow, that makes a lot more sense of kind of what you've been missing this entire time. And then you have the whole situation with Dane and Sersi, as, you know, deciding what she's going to do now, because it is the situation of she isn't even human, so no point in pretending to be anymore, you know? So, but then Dane talks about, like, yeah, there's something about me I haven't talked about either, which surprised me. Like, once again, news already came out about, like, you know, before we even knew Kit Harington's character's name of Dane, we just know he's the Black Knight. I'm like, I know a little bit about the character just because people brought up some stuff here and there. Like, I don't, like, doesn't he have some kind of form of, I think maybe the character has some form of immortality in the comic books, but it might just be like they're setting it up to be in the movie. It's like a lineage thing of like, yeah, you get these powers, but you have to like pick up the sword and stuff like that. Like a very Excalibur thing. But I was actually surprised because I was wondering if he was going to swoop in at any point in time in the movie. It's like, no, either he didn't know about it, because it seems like you have to activate it, so it's not active for him. So he knows about his family's lineage, or did he learn about it at some point in time during the movie while like the camera was off of him? I don't know. But I love the whole thing of like, yeah, I got to open up about something, and then immediately Arishem shows up, and it's just like, wait, what? This is some spooky stuff. It's like you had the Emergence go down, and it's just like, cool. Once again, they're like, planet Earth getting it hard, bro. It's like, I mean, it's been like maybe a couple years, maybe, because once again, it just depends on what thing we're looking at. Because certain things, like, once again, WandaVision, like, chronologically, like, the events of WandaVision take place like a couple weeks after Endgame. So, but like something like Hawkeye seems like it takes place, they kind of reference it's been a couple years So like it seems like it's been like maybe a year or two since Endgame, maybe. The time frame kind of fluctuates a little bit across the show. So, and you know, the movies aren't always clear. It's just like, yep, like Shang-Chi, it's post Blip. How long post Blip? I don't remember them ever really bringing it up. But it's just like, yeah, I mean, the world is still dealing with the Blip on a. You don't just it's a monumental, what I'm trying to say, moment in the Marvel universe. So like obviously people are still going to be shaken from that. Like there's just ripple after ripple after ripple from affected by that. But then all of a sudden you see like Arishem just popping up out of the sky and grabbing Sersi, but not only her, ended up grabbing Kingo as well as Phastos as well, because like the others are already gone. So it's like, cool, you went against what you were designed to do. You decided to save this planet, so I'm taking you and I'm going to look through your memories, which is sad because that means to look through their memories means this thing's going to take their memories out, so they're going to be a blank slate for a while. I mean, I didn't even talk about, but we did see what they look like naturally, like they're like robotic forms essentially. So once again, we've seen like a whole ton of them, so we have no idea like how many Eternals actually exist out there in the world. But yeah, it's just Arishem just like bounced off with them, and Dane decided like that it's time to like, you know, gotta get into action. So I was like, what do you like? I don't know what the full circumstances of the Black Knight are, but I'm like, what can you do against that? He just like popped up on Earth, didn't even pop up on Earth, dragged him out in space, which I'm like, I did notice that when like Ikaris went in the sky. I was like, oh, well, I mean, to be fair, he is the only one who can fly. That's why they needed a ship to transport, because none of the others can fly. And it's also like, right, you're not human, so of course you can breathe in outer space. But the fact is that like he just sucked them up and just bounced. I think it's interesting that he decided not to go after the others. He just kind of left them on their own devices. But to be fair, they meet up with Star Fox, who's like, oh yeah, I'm Thanos' brother, which I love that he gets that little introduction by, what's the guy's name, Pip, and it's like, well, you're Thanos' brother. Because once again, that's a conversation I remember hearing, like, oh, Thanos is supposed to be like, isn't he like part deep, like kind of related to the Eternals because he is a deviant? I don't know whether that's one of those comic book things that got retconned, but like for him to be like, oh yeah, I'm Thanos' brother, it's like, wait, what? I mean, to be fair, we've seen bits and pieces of the Titan situation back in Infinity War, but that was about it. Did we ever see Thanos' people? I actually don't remember. I think we did. It's been a while since I rewatched Infinity War, so I'm blinking. Maybe it's not like a biological brother, but like a half brother. Because maybe that's kind of leaning into the fact is that he is a deviant, because if that, or at least part deviant, because that would make him in fact related to the Eternals, and that, like I said, the Eternals and the Deviants are like kin. They're like brothers and sisters. So, which that's also another thing too. The Deviants are completely gone, at least from Earth. Like that last one was the last one because there was only like a handful that survived because they got released from the ice, and the main Deviant dude like souped up everyone else with Ajak's power. But going back to it, Dane has decided that he's going to take upon the sword. You know, it was like, right, because it's like, what was that? I forgot what the line is written now, but it was like a line written at the top of like the case of the sword. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But like I said, like, what are you going to, like, acquiring that power? Like, I guess whenever the time comes, like with that sword, you can help save Sersi whenever Arishem decides to come back, I guess, or any threat, because he is going to basically pass judgment on this planet. So it makes me wonder, like, well, because the thought, like, you know, it's something I've thrown out, there's something people thrown out there that they want Galactus to be like the next big bad. Well, granted, depending on what they decide to do with him, it's Kang the Conqueror, but you know, we'll see how that plays out. But could this be like their version of doing like a Galactus, making an all-powerful being like a Celestial, kind of serving as kind of an antagonist to some extent, like depending on how that all plays out? Because even Star Fox was like, yo, your friends, they're in deep trouble. But like I said, he has a spear like Ajax does. So, like, maybe he's connected to some other Sentinel he's reporting, not Sentinel, some other Celestial he reports to. A lot of questions on that front. Since this is on that cosmic level, it does make you wonder. Well, because I wonder would the Marvels touch on this at all? I mean, since that's space stuff with Guardians 3. I mean, Guardians 3. There's the whole Gamora thing. There's the Adam Warlock situation. Would that tie into any of this? I would assume if anything would touch on it, maybe some but Doctor Strange has already got the multiverse stuff on, but he has kind of like got an eye on like the multiverse, so that probably is taking his like eyes on things, plus like the Spider-Man stuff. Like his eyes are probably all on Earth stuff, so he probably not even paying attention to like the cosmic stuff. But like I would assume like Carol, so maybe some of the Marvel stuff might tie into some of this Eternal stuff. Guardians might touch on it to some extent. I'm trying to think, is there anything else like galactically that's come up, that's going to be coming up? The only thing I can think of is Guardians, and the Marvel seemed like the only thing I can think of right now that would potentially touch on any of this going forward. But another angle to also think about too is like, well, there's also the Loki situation. It's like, right, Kang stopped himself with the multiversal war thing, but I'm like, I guess you're just like letting all this celestial stuff. Like, do they pay you any attention, or because you were he who remains at the end of time in the void, like they didn't bother with you, or was there anything you actually could do? I mean, hell, you went to war with all these multiverse versions of yourself, so I'm like, I don't know where you stand in the grand scheme of things too. Like, will his story potentially tie into any of this? I mean, his next, well, that we're aware of is obviously Ant-Man 3 Quantumania, but it's like, I would assume that's going to be Quantum Realm stuff, but that's still going to be like Earth-based stuff, I would think. I don't think it would tie into any of this. It's not that I'm aware of. But that's pretty much it. Obviously, just sharing my thoughts. I'd love to get to know yours in the comments down below. How'd you feel about the movie? What are your thoughts about certain things? Just let me know how you were just feeling in general about the movie. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.